Welcome to the 25th anniversary of the Nintendo 64 launch celebration and horror games. We're going to celebrate those today because it is October. Well, it's going to be by the time you hear this, or at least close to it. So today we're going to be doing those things. Wes, my good friend, how are you?
I'm good, my friend. I'm good. Excited to talk about more games.
Absolutely. But before we do that, just a bit of housekeeping really quick. Before we get started, I just want to give a quick shout out to Bernardo for his support over on Patreon. Thank you, Bernardo, for doing that.
Thank you, Bernardo. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. You guys can support us over there as well. Patreon.com/nerdenthusiast, where you can get exclusive videos from a variety of our creators every single month. Please be sure to also follow us over on Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Nerd Enthusiast on all of those things. And of course, if you would please like, subscribe, share, give us a 5-star review on the podcast. Those things really help us out and it doesn't cost you a dime. So if you have the opportunity to do that, we would greatly appreciate it. Now, before we start the N64 stuff, really quick, this will be a nice little segue here. I picked up some new Nintendo Switch games recently. I got Warioware, and for the Nintendo 64 fans, we got Cruisin' Blast. This just came out 2 days ago, or actually yesterday. So these games are pretty decent. WarioWare I've only played for about 45 minutes or so. I played with my wife in 2-player mode. Had some fun with that. Cruisin' Blast, I really, really liked a lot. It brought me back to that period of time. It's a very, very arcade-heavy style racing game. The computer was kind of difficult, but you can kind of see what you need to do to improve in the game. So it's a clear path. It's probably not going to be too difficult to do, but it will take time. Everything's like kind of locked out of the gate. You only have the first like world tour, which is like 4 different tracks. And then you have to like gain experience to unlock additional things. There's cars you can unlock, of course. But the very first car in the game is a Corvette Stingray, which is one of my favorite cars. So definitely a good start for me.
It brought you back, huh?
Oh man, I had a blast. I played it for I was only going to play for maybe a half an hour, or 45 minutes so we could talk about it today, but I ended up playing it for 2 hours this morning. It was great. I really enjoyed it.
Well, cruising lines have always been fun to play. So,
and the music reminds me of those games back then too. It's kind of cheap and cheesy. And I was like, man, I don't think I like this music. It has its own theme song with some woman singing "Cruisin'," it's exactly what you would expect from a game from that era. Which at first I was like, oh man, couldn't they get some licensed bands in here or something, some kind of good soundtrack going on? But then I was like, well, at least it fits with that time frame.
All right, well, looks like I got a game to buy.
Yeah, man, it's only $40, not 60 or 70. Wes, let's start with you, sir. What are some of your favorite Nintendo 64 experiences?
Wow, my favorite experience with Nintendo 64 was the first time I popped in Mario 64.
Nice.
It was great. It was running around in 3D, for the first time. Always played Mario. It was great. It was fun. But then seeing him in a 3D environment, that was probably my favorite experience, because it just, you can't recapture that.
No, you can't.
You can't recapture that.
That was the first 3D game you played then?
For the 64, yes. And then playing Wave Race, seeing the water physics. That was some good times, man.
Yeah, Wave Race was really cool. I definitely enjoyed that quite a bit. I didn't own it, but I rented it a bunch of times. Of course, if you were renting games in the early N64 days, there was about 3 or 4 games that were out. So you pretty much, if you owned 1 or 2, you were only renting the other 1 or 2 that were out at that time. So that's all you could rent for a while.
That's true.
But Mario 64 was fantastic, without a doubt. That was the game that got me. I would say that was the game that made me still play games today, because I was really close to falling out of it. I was this was after obviously Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo. I was well, maybe I'm done with this. I wasn't even planning on getting the console. I walked into a department store and I played it for the first time there, and I was like, oh my God. And immediately I had to have it. That as soon as you run around with Mario in 3D for the first time, I can't explain to you younger kids out there how groundbreaking that was. It was unbelievable. It literally broke my mind in half. I couldn't believe that was possible in a video game form.
Right, because he still it felt like you were playing 2D Mario with the
It did.
running and the jumping and the sound effects, but it was just in 3D.
And what a great way to explain the camera system, especially to children. Like they're like, hey, like right when the game starts, like, oh, here's, I think they call him Lakitu or something. Like this guy is following you around with a camera and you can move him from this direction. That's what this is how you can see. Like you immediately could wrap your mind around it, no matter how old or young you were. You're like, oh, I get it. You know, like that was so ingenious of them to install that in the game right in the beginning. Even though it kind of takes you out of the experience, it teaches you immediately how to use the camera in a 3D game for the first time. So that was definitely my biggest experience as well. There's plenty of other ones we're going to get into in a few minutes. What about like peripherals? Because this system had like a bunch of different peripherals that you and I both, I'm sure, enjoyed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Rumble Pack comes to mind first because, you know, it was, even though the PlayStation, you know, came out with the DualShock controller, but the Rumble Pack, you know, you plug it in the bottom and you know, it gave you, you know, simulated rumbles every time you did something. I remember because I was working at EB at the time, and we sold tons of them. Just about every game was compatible with the Rumble Pack.
Yeah, so the Rumble Pack went into the bottom of the N64 controller.
Yeah, the memory card went in the bottom where the Rumble Pack goes. So you couldn't technically use both at the same time.
You had to like swap them out when you wanted to save and stuff.
Yep.
Which was kind of foolish of them. They should have kind of thought about that ahead of time. But the Rumble Pack was awesome, man. Do you remember the first game that came with the Rumble Pack?
Star Fox.
Yes, it was.
Star Fox? It was Star Fox.
64 came with a built-in Rumble Pack, and that game, I think, I mean, we'll get into this in a few minutes about the prices, but I want to say that game was $90 because it came with a Rumble Pack and the cartridge together.
Yep.
And I remember getting that game for sure, man. That game was awesome. That was another, what a wonderful experience. In my opinion, the best Star Fox game.
Yeah, because you figure that was like the first Star Fox game we got since Super Nintendo.
Mm-hmm.
Since Super Nintendo, because they scrapped Star Fox 2. And then, so we haven't had a Star Fox game in such a long time. And then we got that. It was what everybody wanted.
Yeah, and it had branching paths, so it's like, oh, you can go this way and beat the game, but if you do this, you can go over here and you can beat the game this way. Man, I played the hell out of that game. I played the multiplayer in that game. I played everything in that game. And having that Rumble Pack and the controllers shaking for like the first time was such an experience. What a wonderful experience that was.
Yeah. Oh, Star Fox. Yes, it was.
And then we had the controller packs also. Like the controller packs are what Nintendo called the memory card for whatever reason. They you know, Nintendo had in Nintendo things and just like, all right, we're not gonna call this a memory card. We're gonna call it a controller pack. And they didn't spell it PACK. Everything was PAK. So it was like controller pack, Rumble Pack. That's how they like defined most of their like, you know, accessories that fit into the controller.
Okay, here's a question for you. What was your experience holding the Nintendo 64 controller for the first time? Because it was very odd shaped.
You know, yeah, it was. It was very odd shaped, and like, you know, the first time, it's been a long time. It's been decades at this point, but I believe the first time I held it, I didn't grab it the way you're supposed to grab it. I grabbed it by the D-pad and the buttons on the outside, and I was trying to control Mario at this kiosk in the department store, and obviously Mario doesn't run using the D-pad. So then I sat there for like a moment. I was like, what the hell am I doing here? I was like, all right. Move my hands around, like moved it to the middle. But as soon as he was running around and I can control him in 3D with that stick, I was like, I instantly got it. It wasn't like, it didn't take me an extremely long time to figure out. Like, I understand how some people would struggle with that. And I'm sure I did a little bit, but I wrapped my head around it rather quickly. Did you have a similar experience?
It took me a minute to kind of grasp it because the way you had to hold it, it didn't feel like a regular controller.
Yeah, it was weird.
It was weird. So it took me a minute to kind of get adjusted to it. Depending upon what game I was playing, it took a little longer, but eventually we got it, and it was second nature, and we just picked it up and ran with it, and it was what it was. It kept on moving. Right.
There was definitely a learning curve for sure. I'm not saying that there wasn't, but I feel like if you were already playing games at that point and like you kind of transitioned from Super Nintendo to that, I think you picked it up, like, you didn't pick it up immediately and understood it, but like you could understand how it was supposed to work and what you needed to do to get better in the game.
Right.
Yeah, I felt like that too. And like when I give people controllers today and like they're baffled by like dual analog sticks, I get that that's harder because one controls the camera and one doesn't. But with the N64, it was just the one analog stick, so that
Yep.
I feel like that was a much more easier path to get into than to hand a controller with two analog sticks and be like, here, you'll understand this, because that really like affected a lot of people who especially didn't play games for a while.
Yeah, but like you said before, it's like your natural instinct is to, when you first grab the Nintendo 64 controller, is to grab it on the sides and
Yep.
hold it like a regular controller, because it had the three, I guess, the three necks.
Yeah.
So it was like it was weird.
It was weird, and everybody gives that controller crap. I still love that controller to this day. I remember counting the buttons on it like when I was younger. I was like blown away by how many buttons were on that controller, because there was no controller that had that many buttons at the time. I was like, I can't even understand. This is amazing. Like there's so many buttons on this controller. And I understand it was kind of advanced and hard to get into, but I like the N64 controller. I don't love it. It's not my favorite.
Mhm.
But when people talk trash, I'm like, I don't understand what you're talking about. Like you
Pick it up
you're
and
just
play
used to
it.
what you're used to now. Yeah. You didn't grow up with it, that's for damn sure.
Oh, what else? What else did we have? What else did we have? We had, oh, the expansion pack. Remember when the expansion pack came out?
Yes, I do. And
To
do,
get
do you
to give
remember
it
the game
extra
that
memory.
came with?
It came with Donkey Kong.
Yes, it did. It came
Came
with
with
Donkey
Donkey
Kong
Kong.
64. And you were able to get these expansion packs. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure those expansion packs came out first. They were available for like a little while. And then Donkey Kong came out with the official one from N64, because there was third-party memory packs that weren't made by Nintendo.
Yeah, I think Mad Catz made some.
Mad Catz made some for sure. I got one from an EB Games or Games, or not GameStop. It would have been Electronics Boutique or Babbage's at that time, I believe.
Okay.
But I the first one I owned was like a third party one, and the guy at the store convinced me to get it because they didn't have the N64, and I was like, all right, whatever. He's like, it's the same thing, and I tried it. I was like, well, I still want the Nintendo one. So then I got the one with Donkey Kong, and I was like, all right, swap those things out. Never use the other one again.
Yeah, yeah. For people who don't know, the expansion pack gave the Nintendo extra RAM
Yep, RAM.
to run the more graphically heavy games like Star Wars, Star Wars Rogue Squadron definitely needed it. Donkey Kong needed it. I think Zelda needed it. Yeah, and these games wouldn't work without it.
Yeah, they either wouldn't work without it. There'd be like a warning on the thing. It would say like expansion pack required. And
Mhm.
what's funny now in like the retro community, when you buy an N64, if the person that you're buying it from doesn't know what they're doing, and you open up that expansion pack is worth some money now. Like people look for those things. So I've seen like people selling N64s that don't have any memory, like there's no RAM at all. Like they remove the
They
RAM.
removed the RAM out. Yeah.
Yeah, like if you guys are buying N64s, you need to look at that. Open up that slot, make sure there's some sort of RAM in there. And if you see that it's the expansion pack, then you're making out like a bandit, as long as they're not charging you an arm and a leg for it.
Mm-hmm.
But you definitely want to have that for I think I want to say Ocarina of Time might have used that, or not
Yeah.
Ocarina of Time, the sequel, Majora's Mask. I think
Majora's
Majora's Mask
Mask.
used it. Definitely Donkey Kong, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Jet Force Gemini, because I think that was a later release.
I think so.
Perfect Dark, I believe, used it.
Yes.
I'm just guessing off of what like my memory was from decades ago, so you'll have to forgive me if I'm incorrect.
Oh man, what else did we have peripheral wise? Oh, the Game Shark.
Yes, Game Shark was a classic. So I had the Game Shark for the N64. I've had I had a Game Genie for the NES at some point.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what happened to it. I don't know how I got it. It was in my house for a period of time, and then it disappeared. I don't know if we bought one and we gave it away, or if my cousin maybe brought one over and we used his. I have no idea, but I did use a Game Genie before. And then for the Super Nintendo and Genesis era, I also, kind of similar situation. I had a Game Genie at some point for the Genesis,
Mm-hmm.
and I used that for like a few certain things. But the 64, the only thing I really remember using the Game Shark for a lot was GoldenEye. And that, I used to unlock all the modes right away. And eventually I got excellent at that game. And I didn't even need Game Shark. I just unlocked everything myself. But That was a good first step to having, like, paintball mode turned on. You can do all sorts of stuff, turning on big head mode immediately, like when you're playing multiplayer. All that stuff was a blast.
Yeah, I'd never used a Game Shark. I mean, I know what it is, I know what it does. I just personally never took to a Game Shark.
Have you used any like cheat devices like that on any console ever?
No, I have not.
Really?
I have not.
You
I
never had a Game Genie back in the day for your
I
NES?
didn't. Nope. I didn't.
I mean, for that era, I feel like everybody had a Game Genie, or they knew somebody who had a Game Genie and they used theirs at some point.
Yeah, I knew how they work. The Game Genie, the Game Shark. I never personally owned one, and never, I don't know. I just suffered through and did everything the hard way.
Hey man, I mean that's respectable. I used it for certain situations. I don't even remember what the hell it was. Like I couldn't. It was probably like stupid things, like like turning on those modes in GoldenEye. I don't think that I ever used it to like, oh, I'm gonna get past this boss and be invincible or anything like that. But if you locked me out of modes and I wanted the modes, like that's what I would probably use it for.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
While we're on the subject, just a quick segue. Have you used strategy guides before?
I have. I have. Now I'll use that if I'm really stuck. I'll use a strategy guide, or like if I was super excited about a fighting game and I really wanted to learn the character quickly, I would get a strategy guide to learn like moves and special moves instead of doing the suffering through it and learning it on my own. But yeah, I did use a strategy guide every now and then, only when I really needed it though.
I do too, but in like very specific situations. Like it's really odd. Like I've used like online guides before. I've used strategy guides before, and in most situations, I find them quite annoying. Like because I have to stop what I'm doing and like invest. Like I'm looking at a screen or I'm looking at a book, and I'm figuring out what to do from reading. So I'm constantly having to stop my experience with the game and use those things. So I typically don't like them, with one major exception. I know this is probably going to sound crazy to some people, but every time there's a Zelda game, I have to have the strategy guide, because I don't just want to play the game. I want to devour every single thing that is in that game. And God forbid I miss something. Like, I put, well over probably 150 hours into Breath of the Wild. Wow. Ocarina of Time, I beat, I don't even know how many times. I think I beat the Japanese version where everything was mirrored as well. And I mean, I used guides, but like it was not because I wanted to like cheat and beat the game. It's like I don't want to miss anything. Like this experience is so good that there's not a single thing that I want to miss in this game. And it's mostly Zelda games where I use guides. I have guides to all sorts of games, and I hardly ever look at them for anything. But Zelda, I'm getting the guide, and I'm getting the hardback if I have the option.